Coming off a Copa Libertadores title for Botafogo, we saw high-profile owner John Textor front and center during the celebrations. And that's no small accomplishment, winning a trophy for Botafogo. But for everything he's accomplished in Brazil, the opposite end of the spectrum has been hit for Lyon, which is on the verge of bankruptcy in France. So is Textor a visionary multi-club owner, or a risky gambler pushing football giants to the brink? Is his multi-club ownership model a good thing? And should it be allowed? And perhaps the most important question, is John Textor a good owner? We're going to try and get to the bottom of this next here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. John Textor, an American owner, heads up the Eagle Football Ownership Group, and his portfolio has some really historic names in it. Lyon in France, Botafogo in Brazil, Crystal Palace in England, Molenbeek in Belgium. His multi-club model is part of the new era of football ownership, and we're even seeing some changes where he's trying to sell Crystal Palace and purchase Everton, and it leaves us wondering, is this good for football, and does it benefit all of the clubs in the group, or just one over the other? So those are the questions we're going to try and get to the bottom of today. But before we get too far down this rabbit hole, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can give the channel a follow. Get down to that comment section. What do you think about Textor? Other multi-club owners? Would you want this for your club? Does it work? Get in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub, and make sure you check out the website pitchsidepub.com. So Textor's been back in the news again with the Botafogo success winning the Copa. And, you know, when they win, he seems to be front and center in the success, and then he sort of fades into the background at the clubs that don't have as much success or are going through financial problems. And that alone doesn't make him that much different than a lot of other owners, but he does seem to really relish the high-profile situations. And his success in Botafogo should be commended. That is a club that has had a long history of not having success, and he has brought them to a place where they are competitive in Brazil, and that should be commended. But for everything good that's going on there, you have to look at the situation in Lyon, which is absolutely falling apart at the seams, and while it's not all Textor's fault, he does carry some of the blame. Lyon is a titan of French football, and they find themselves in dire financial straits. The club is dealing with staggering debts reportedly exceeding 500 million euros. And while a portion of this burden stems from the legacy spending under their longtime president, Jean-Michel Aulas, the situation has gotten worse under John Textor's ownership. Aulas relied on significant investments in hopes of consistent Champions League qualifications, which would have bolstered revenue streams. However, consecutive failures to reach the tournament left Lyon without the financial cushion they need to balance their ambitious plans. Textor purchased the club in 2022 and promised to usher in a new era, but instead he took on a massive financial burden and failed to inject the necessary capital to fix the situation. Instead, they've had strict financial regulations imposed upon them by the French league's financial watchdog DNCG, which have led to drastic measures including a transfer ban and talks about selling key assets just to keep the club afloat. To make matters worse, Textor's leadership transition was tumultuous, and his disagreements with Aulas over the club's future strategy left Lyon in a precarious, rudderless state. Now it looks like they're going to have to sell off pretty much any valuable asset that they have just to avoid an automatic relegation down to the second division, regardless of where they finish in Ligue 1, just because of the financial regulations that are being put on them. It's a terrible situation for Lyon, and Textor, who promised to come in and fix the situation, really has not been able to do anything about it. Botafogo, on the other hand, has traditionally been one of Brazil's historic football giants, but they've endured a decades-long decline, characterized by regulations, financial instability, and fan disillusionment. By the time Textor arrived in 2022, around the same time he was buying Lyon, the club was at a crossroads. But unlike Lyon, where chaos reigned, Textor took a methodical approach in Brazil. He prioritized clearing the club's debts, modernizing their operations, and engaging directly with the fans to restore confidence in his ownership. This deliberate strategy worked as Botafogo climbed the ranks to become one of Brazil's most competitive teams. The club's stunning victory in this year's Copa Libertadores marked the pinnacle of their resurgence. By leveraging investments on both infrastructure and talent development, Textor has turned a struggling institution into a model of stability and success, proving that a patient, hands-on approach can lead to remarkable outcomes. The difference here is that he inherited a Botafogo club that was a bit of a mess, whereas he inherited a club in Lyon that, at least in the front-facing part, was a success. They had done well on the pitch, it was their financial books that were a mess, whereas Botafogo had been a mess all around, so there was a lot more room for growth. The situation is not necessarily apples to apples, but club ownership is club ownership, and you have to look at both to understand what went right and what went wrong. Now, his ownership in Crystal Palace presents a more nuanced story in the Textor ownership saga. He joined the ownership group in 2021 alongside Steve Parish, but Textor took a back seat compared to his direct involvement at Lyon and Botafogo. The club has remained financially stable, largely due to its shared ownership structure, but the results on the pitch have been mixed. Palace has hovered around the Premier League mid-table, avoiding relegation, but failing to make a significant impact and progress towards European competition. One bright spot, however, has been the club's development from its youth academy, which has produced notable talent in recent years. However, the lack of substantial investment in the first team has limited Palace's ability to break into the Premier League's upper echelon. We talked this summer about the possibility of what Crystal Palace could be building if they could just reinvest and hold on to their young core, but they didn't do that. They sold off Michael Olise, they shopped Mark Gahey aggressively, and he's almost certain to leave, and they have failed to capitalize on a really young, talented core that could have taken them to the next level because the investment around them was not there. The mixed record underscores the importance of balance in football ownership. While stability is crucial, ambition and strategic investment are often necessary to achieve lasting success. The question, of course, is how much of this has to do with the fact that Textor has his hands in multiple pots? Where are his resources going? Are they split too far? Is he spread too wide between Palace and Lyon and Botafogo and other clubs and trying to sell off part of Palace and wanting to buy Everton? Where are his priorities, both mentally, emotionally, and of course financially? Textor's strategy reflects the growing trend of multi-club ownership in football popularized by the City Football Group. Proponents argue it creates synergies, allowing clubs to share resources and talent. However, critics point out the risk: overstretching finances, loss of identity for individual clubs, and the danger of a single point of failure. Textor's record encapsulates these extremes, with Botafogo thriving, Lyon floundering, and Crystal Palace stuck in limbo. So is John Textor a good owner? Well, I guess it depends on which club you're a fan of that he owns. Botafogo is having great success, Lyon is an absolute mess, and Crystal Palace is sort of sitting there saying, hey, what about us? We could be better, but we didn't get the financial investment that we wanted. Imagine if he owned only Crystal Palace and all of the resources that were put in the other clubs were put into Palace. Could they have kept Olise? Would they be keeping Mark Gahey? Who knows? It's not always that simple, and clubs are restricted by financial fair play and other framework and restrictions that mean an owner can't just invest as much money as he wants. But the model is there for success. What he did at Botafogo works, but it has not worked at Lyon, and Crystal Palace is sort of stuck in the middle wondering what's going to happen. Multi-club ownership, while innovative, isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Textor's story shows that leadership, local context, and financial prudence are crucial to its success. There is definitely the risk to be spread too thin and have your resources going in too many places. Is that what's happening with Textor? Or are some clubs just getting lucky and others are making bad decisions? There are still decision makers at each club, of which the best laid plans are dependent. So if the moves don't work out, even the right financial investment can sometimes lead to a downfall, and that is part of what has happened in Lyon. But I'd love to get your thoughts. Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think about Textor, about multi-club ownership. I would love to get your thoughts, particularly if you are a fan of one of these clubs. You can also leave some comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel, and make sure you check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.